Well, the World Cup final ended with penalty shootout, but it began with the best beginning possible, really, for Argentina, starting, Tim, with the team sheet.
Yeah, it did. So Di Maria, Scaloni's done this a few times in the tournament. In fact, if you look at what they've done in the knockout stages, he's been very, very good at surprising the opposition with how he's set his team up. Less good at reacting during matches, I think it's fair to say. But, he went 3-4-3 against the Dutch in the quarters, completely nullified Dumfries and Blint. Then in the semis, it was 2 up front, wasn't it, against Croatia? And then back to 4 at the back. And then here it's 4 at the back, but it's very much 3 up front. Di Maria all on his own on the left, with McAllister not too far behind him. And France just didn't really know how to deal with that. And that's how the first goal came about, because Di Maria's all on his own on the left.
The first half was all about Di Maria, wasn't it? And he played with chalk on his boots, didn't he? It was very old-fashioned in terms of asking the wide player, you hug the touchline, literally, and we'll play with 10. But you stay there because we're going to switch the ball to you at the earliest opportunity, and you're going to run at Jules Koundé, and you're going to take him to the cleaners. That was the game plan. And that is what unfolded.
Yeah, and they didn't know how to deal with it, because if you look at that first goal, that France actually set up quite nicely in a couple of banks, quite narrow. Di Maria's just all on his own, but he manages to get Dembele isolated, and of course Dembele's great strength is not defending, and then he wins the penalty from that.
Yeah, and I think it was just about a penalty. So that was
about.
Very, very clever, I think, from Scaloni. It looked like one of the big tactical mistakes to take off Angel Di Maria, didn't it? So early, 63 minutes.
Yeah. Well, they had at that point there was only one team in it. France hadn't had a kick, so Messi converts the penalty. The first player to score in the group stage, last 16, quarterfinal, semi-final, and final of the same World Cup, which is remarkable because he'd never scored a knockout goal in any previous tournament. And while we were wondering what one unemployed man by the name of Ronaldo might be thinking about all of this, they then go 2-0 up, and this one's a wonderful move from, pretty much involving the whole team.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned it earlier, and Adrian mentioned weight of pass, and every single pass was perfectly weighted. It was Messi sort of unlocked the door. Alvarez pass sort of completely opened it up, and then McAllister plays it to Di Maria, who minutes earlier had produced, I think, the worst shot of the tournament. I think there was a bobble involved, but it went about 30 yards over the bar. But the way he plays it into the ground, very controlled finish. And then the celebration. I mean, for a while we thought that was going to be the last goal of the tournament, and what a way to celebrate. It was very, wide-eyed, open-mouthed, arms wide. It was it had a bit of Tardelli or Grosso about it, Fantastic moment, and he doesn't come across as a footballer with a huge ego, does he? Really, it was, and it was for a long time. It looked like it was going to be his day today.
And it was curious how France seemed unable to respond to the fact that there was clearly a man on his own causing them all the problems.
Exactly. I think it caught Didier Deschamps off guard. I don't think he expected Di Maria to start on the left wing. Certainly not to almost sacrifice himself in general play to stay out there and stretch the play. But that was the ploy. And maybe because he was on the opposite side of the field, he couldn't seem to get the message across to Jules Koundé or to Dembele in regards to how to deal with it. And unfortunately, Dembele paid the price for that, didn't he? He had a very poor first 40 minutes, and he gets the hook. And I think Olivier Giroud's substitution at that point as well is more down to the fact that Kylian Mbappe hadn't had a kick. He really had been on the periphery of the game. He just thought, Deschamps, I've got to get him down the middle. I've got to get him as the pivot of this side to get him into positions where he can score goals rather than just make them. So that was a ballsy move from Didier Deschamps. Not the kind of move every manager would have made. Yeah, double substitution in a World Cup final on 40 minutes. There are, I would say, 9 out of 10 managers, maybe 99 out of 100 managers would wait until half-time to make that change, especially in a match of that gravitas. But he saw that it needed to happen, and he didn't waver. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. I think we should also mention the midfield of Argentina. In that first half, they purred. Like, they were incredible. Enzo Fernandez, Rodrigo de Paul, Alexis McAllister. These guys absolutely dominated the game. And France was so passive. And that's why we were thinking, are they still ill? Are they not right? Because they were getting nowhere near these Argentine players who, for much of this tournament, have been workmanlike and aggressive and hostile, but not especially dominant. But here they were. I think what happened in the end was that they tired, and that the substitutes, the young legs of Kolo Muani, of Coman, who dispossessed Messi for the goal, and Thuram came on, and they did inject just a fresh energy, and they basically just put the ball, or they tested the Argentine defence in a way they hadn't had any sort of exertions previously. They asked some questions, and lo and behold, they started to panic.
Otamendi concedes the foul, and Mbappe converts the penalty, and 90 seconds later, as you mentioned, Messi loses the ball, and away we go.
Yeah, and it's the right back, isn't it? Molina that gets caught, doesn't deal with it. I think there's a knockdown from Mbappe. It's a little lob pass back to him, and then we see a volley that we'll see for many, many years to come. As Danny was saying, most players would have taken a touch there and looked to bend one in, but he just hits it early, and it was a glorious moment for Mbappe and for France.
It was. Again, you're looking at the control of it. I think it was Thuram who played the pass, which is gorgeous. But he's on the slide, and he's most players just whack it into the stand. But the control of it was crazy.
So France had moved level, and at this point, it didn't seem that Argentina could stop them taking the lead before the 90s was up.
Yeah, it's really easy to forget who had the momentum at what points in this game. But yeah, I do remember us saying, as it was approaching full time, that it looked like France were the winners here, and Argentina really needed that stoppage and that team talk at the start of extra time.
Yeah, well, they were 10 minutes away from a comfortable 2-0 win in a World Cup final, and they saw those hopes dashed. And I just think it frazzled their minds. Never has a team needed a full-time whistle, I think, more than Argentina.
Right.
And I think that Scaloni also deserves a little bit of credit for sort of galvanising or re-galvanising them and making them believe that actually that the destiny isn't that France come back and win this. It's just that's a setback, park it, forget about it, and we go again from here. And I think in extra time, it toed and froed, but I felt Argentina were going to win it in extra time rather than France.
One thing that did happen at the end of 90 minutes, I think both of these were in stoppage time. Mbappe and Messi just took it upon themselves to try and drag their team to victory. You had Mbappe's shot just outside the box, which was deflected over. And then at the other end, Messi does his version. It was a decent save from Luis. He should have saved it, but still, both of those players were just desperate to drag their team over the line in stoppage time. So dramatic.
I think throughout the game, amid all this carnage, it was always Argentina that found the little triangles around the box to free up a spare man for a shot. They produced all the best moments of pretty football. There was that moment involving Messi, I think it was in extra time. He bursts into the box, squares a one-touch pass, and then there's a strike on goal, isn't there? And Upamecano just comes from absolutely nowhere, just flies in front and makes an incredible block. And then from the follow-up, there was a brilliant scissor-like shot that also deflects off him and over.
Off Varane's head,
it was Montiel, I think.
Montiel.
With sort of an air scissor kick, which was going in, by the way, and would have been the greatest goal ever scored in a World Cup final. Also, to point out, Mbappe scored 3 penalties, and I think they put them all in the same corner tonight, which is astonishing. Really,
yeah, that is impressive. And Sir Geoff Hurst, obviously, we haven't even mentioned that he's the second player to score a hat trick in a World Cup final. Mbappe. So Geoff Hurst, I think, tweeted, didn't he, straight away?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, he'd had a good run.
It had everything. It had these two great rivals, Mbappe and Messi, both producing fantastic performances. It had one of the great World Cup goals. It had penalties, shootout drama, and it had the reward of seeing this overarching narrative that's been behind so many of these last few weeks, finally crowned with what felt like absolutely the right ending. And, apologies if you're a France supporter, it probably didn't feel that way to you, but I think for most people, it seemed like absolutely the way it should have ended.
Yeah, he is the greatest player that I've seen, certainly, but I believe he's the greatest of all time. But he's certainly cemented it now with this performance in the tournament as a whole. Just amazing. It is true Roy of the Rover stuff.
Hello there. If you've enjoyed this video, why not subscribe to this channel? The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around, and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.